us, but then we will take it away from there.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Jorge Bogantes. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist at the Anacostia Watershed Society, and we are very excited about our 8th Anacostia River Bioblitz, and very grateful with tonight's guests, Deborah Barber from the Nature Conservancy and Anna Kahanui from Capital Nature. They're gonna give you an iNaturalist 101, and thank you very much for doing this and for collaborating with past bio blitzes and such. So yeah, you can take it away from here.
All right, let's go. So I'm Deborah, and we will tell you a little bit more about who is talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for having us, Jorge. I work with the Nature Conservancy, the Maryland, DC chapter, and I'm the director of land conservation. So I get to see a lot of really fabulous areas in Maryland up close and personal. And the last 6 years or so that I've been using iNaturalist, I love to use it to document what I'm seeing on those preserves. I'm all about supporting the City Nature Challenge, which is a global BioBlitz that happens every spring. And I work closely with Anna on making the City Nature Challenge really fabulous for the greater DC area. In addition, I really enjoy hosting monthly Zooms, kind of like this, in which we work on developing the skills and confidence of the DC area iNaturalist community. Like Jody, I'm a native plant gardener, and native plant gardeners are as much about the wildlife that those native plants support as they are about the plants. And I use iNaturalist to document all of the cool bugs and things that come to my native plant garden. It's very, very useful for that. And a lot of my observations on iNaturalist are from Rhode Island, East Texas, southwestern Utah. Those are places that I'm particularly closely connected with. But I had a fabulous time using iNaturalist on vacation in Australia and New Zealand over the summer. Saw so many new things, just was constantly taking pictures, clicking away, got so many new species. And I just recently went through my photos and uploaded some that I missed adding to iNaturalist the first time because I was just so busy and so exhausted. And it really was like just a wonderful revisiting of some of the fabulous things that I saw this summer. So I use iNaturalist for a lot of reasons. I use it for a lot of things, and I just love everything that it does for me. So that's me.
Thanks,
Anna.
Deborah, and thanks, Jorge, for hosting us. I am an iNat nerd. I love using iNaturalist ever since I got involved with the City Nature Challenge about 8 years ago, and just love working with Deborah and our team on managing the DC Metro Challenge. I'm out in Burke, Virginia. I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, but I live in Burke with my dog and my husband. I'm a Fairfax Master Naturalist in the Virginia group there. My day job is at the U.S. Green Building Council, so I've been in the sustainability movement for about 21 years now. I'm in their marketing department. I'm also a certified forest therapy guide, so I've been certified to lead forest bathing walks through the something with a really long name, the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs. And so I do that on the weekends, leading nature walks and forest bathing walks. As Deborah mentioned, I am on the regional leadership team for the DC City Nature Challenge, or CNC as we like to say. And then she and I are both active on the Washington Area Citizen Science Network. And that's when once or twice a year we convene groups of folks that are doing citizen science projects in the region. And so that's me. And I also love to take, I'm a birder, and I also love to take lots of pictures, and I'm a fungi fanatic. So there's a lot going on with me. And I just, anywhere I go where I'm using iNaturalist and someone says, hey, what are you doing? I love to kind of spread the gospel of iNaturalist. So I'm happy to be here tonight. Thanks. So we're going to start off by just, in case some people on the call are not familiar with the concept of citizen or community science that is now called, it's also called participatory science now, so that no one feels excluded. And so basically, there are all kinds of scientific projects out there in the world where scientists just don't have enough hands, eyes, and ears to collect the data. And so community science is when a certain topic is picked, and we use tools, both digital and manual tools, to engage the public and the community to gather the data. And so what's great about it is anyone can do it. It's multi-generational, which is great. Families can work together, classrooms can work together. And so, and it can be on any topic. There's my Capital Nature co-founder, Stella Tarnay, she and I have given talks on just like citizen and community science programs that one could get involved in. And that's a whole presentation in itself. If you like clouds, if you like rocks, if you like stream monitoring, there's just so many different things that you could do with community science. Next. So what do we do? Well, we volunteer our time. We go out and we make observations based on the parameters that people have given us. Like, I need you to go and look at this number of trees in this area. We collect and we share data. So again, we either are writing things down or taking pictures or recording sounds using different digital tools and different manual tools. And then we submit all that information. Next slide. Why is it important? Well, we all saw from the pandemic that connecting us to nature is very important, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. So getting out is good for us. And the way a lot of us believe is if we connect to nature, we'll probably care for it more. So when I learned that my pictures could contribute to scientific research through the iNaturalist app years ago, I was all in, because we're taking pictures of things all the time with our devices. And, if we can just kind of spread the word that, hey, did you know that that picture that you took of that beetle can contribute to scientific research? That's an exciting thing. And so the more we connect to nature, the more we may be active in stewarding the environment. Next slide. And most importantly, it's all about having fun. I mean, it shouldn't be a chore. Lately, the kind of activities I've been doing for citizen science lately have been moth observation nights, where we go out in different parks and put up a big white sheet and put black lights on it and wait and see what comes. And so that's just one different example. And it's just fun to engage with all these different members of the community, going into different regions in the area and exploring their nature as well. Next slide. So what's iNaturalist? Well, I mentioned it's an app. It's a free app available for both Android and iPhones. And it's actually a social platform. It's a platform where people can connect, where we can record observations, and we'll go over the details of that in a second. You can meet other people. I've made several iNaturalist friends just from my engagement with the platform, people that have commented or people that have identified things that I've made observations of. And so it's a way to connect to people. It's a way to learn. You might not know what you're taking pictures of, what plant, what beetle, what bee. And so it's a way to learn about what you're observing. And then, as I mentioned before, these observations that you're making can contribute to science. And I love this picture on the left. This is one of my mentors, Melanie Chukas-Bradley. She's a local naturalist and forest bathing guide, and she's leading a tree tour on the Capitol grounds. And so this was during the City Nature Challenge. And so she's showing a whole bunch of people like how to make identifications, looking at leaves and buds of things. Next slide.
Hold on.
No
There
problem.
we go.
So what's great with our smartphones, yes, I'm a photographer too. I take my regular manual camera out and take photos, but a lot of us, we're usually just shooting pictures with our phones. And some of them have macro abilities. Our friend Sarah Nella here is taking a picture of some fungi and lichen on a log. But then we also, we recommend that you can get little clip-ons, that little macro lenses that you can put on. I know, Jorge, do you still have the Zenvo one that you used to wear around your neck? I think I just found mine.
Yes.
Yeah, use that a lot. Yeah, so that's great. Anyway, so it's just really convenient to make observations with your phones and upload them to iNaturalist. Next slide.
So I can take it from here, Anna.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did I just jump in? I'm so sorry. You know what? I am on autopilot. Go for it, Deborah. I'm so excited.
So
Go
you
ahead.
all might notice
Go ahead.
that
Go ahead.
generally when the slide has a leaf on it, that's my slide. And if it has a flower on it, that's Anna's slide. But she was so excited that she was talking on some of the leaf slides, and that is no problem at all. But now I will urge you all, before you come out and participate in the Anacostia Watershed Society Bioblitz, to get an iNaturalist account. You can download the app for free from the App Store or Google Play. Make yourself an account, sign in, make yourself a username, and remember your password. And then you'll be using iNaturalist to share your observations of things that you see during the BioBlitz. not only will you be using iNaturalist to contribute your observations, but you get feedback on the species identification and other information from actual people. There are a lot of photo ID apps out there, and iNaturalist helps you identify what you're seeing really well, just as well as or better than the other photo ID apps. But what really sets iNaturalist apart is, as Anna mentioned, it's not just an ID platform, it's a citizen science platform and a social network. So it'll do all kinds of things for you beyond your species ID. It works across all these platforms. You can use it on your desktop. You can use it on your Android or your iPhone, and you'll be using it in the field primarily with your smartphone, but I'll also be giving a short tour of some of the additional functions that are available to you on the desktop. So here's a pro tip that will share with you beforehand to save you some time and some data. If in your phone settings you turn off automatic upload, and wait until you get home on your own home Wi-Fi signal to upload your observations, that will save you time in the field. It'll save you data if you're paying for data, if you don't have an unlimited data plan, and it'll save your battery life. So I do urge you to turn off automatic upload in your settings, in your iNaturalist settings. So the key building block of iNaturalist is what we call an observation. And an observation is one person's interaction with an organism at a certain time in a certain place. And the observations that are eligible for verification by other people provide some kind of evidence, either a photograph or an audio file, giving evidence of what you saw. So again, an observation, one encounter between one person, one organism in one time at one place. So this is what an observation looks like on the desktop. This is an observation that I made recently, dbarber, that's my username. And I was on a caterpillar safari a couple of weekends ago. It was so fun. We walked really slowly through the woods and we turned leaves over to see what was underneath them. And we saw really, really great stuff. So this is a photograph that I took of a very, very fuzzy moth caterpillar that somebody found. It looks exactly like what I pull out of my cat brush after I've been brushing their fur. It was so fuzzy and fluffy. I took the photo, I uploaded it to iNaturalist, and the computer vision made a few suggestions about what it was. Showed me some pictures, and I chose the picture that looked the most like the organism that I had seen and taken in my picture. So I chose the delicate cycnia moth. And then just later that day, that was 9 days ago, and then later that very same day, S.B. Brown came in and confirmed my identification of this delicate cycnia moth. So this is how the iNaturalist community can come in and help to confirm or improve or refine your species suggestions. The observation also contains information about where I was when I saw it. And this observation reached what's called research grade because 2/3 or more of people agreed about what the species identification was. So that's an observation, one person interacting with an organism in a place and a time, and ideally providing audio or visual evidence. So this is what the observation screens look like on your smartphone. You take a picture either within the app or you just take pictures and upload them from your photo roll. You add them to iNaturalist, one picture at least, but multiple pictures are possible and even better. And then when you click in the what did you see field, iNaturalist will use its computer vision, which is amazing right now and getting better all the time, to make species suggestions. So iNaturalist suggested multiple species, and you can do some due diligence, compare and contrast by clicking on any of these little information icons to compare the pictures and decide which one is the best match. In addition, the program automatically uploads, this is not my observation, this is somebody else's, automatically uploads the date and the location of the observation. And you can set the geoprivacy. If for some reason you don't want to share the specific location of the species, you can obscure it. So this is what observation fields look like on your smartphone. So after that, all of those photos that reach research grade, meaning again, there's a high degree of consensus within the community about the correct species identification, those research grade photos are slurped up every so often and used to train, retrain, and improve the computer vision model. And in the few years that I've been using iNaturalist, I've seen many, many species added to the computer vision model, and I've seen the species identification suggestions get better and better and better. It's really quite amazing. It uses artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of scary stuff in the news about artificial intelligence these days, but this is the good kind of artificial intelligence. All right, so again, a closer look at what the AI does for you. It'll make suggestions, and it will tell you whether these suggestions are made purely based on visual similarity, or also whether these species are seen or expected nearby. So you get to look closely, compare and contrast, pick the one that you like the best, and you're off to the races. So a verifiable observation I mentioned has evidence. It's also got a date, which is going to be automatically included in the photos that you take on your smartphone. It's georeferenced, meaning it shows where on the planet that observation was made. The evidence is the photos or the sound recordings that you submit. And it is fine to use iNaturalist to take pictures of captive or cultivated organisms for your own learning, but please mark them as such, because we don't want to confuse the system about where wild species are naturally distributed. Okay, great. So when you first submit your observation is going to show up as needing ID. It'll show up in a certain bucket where other iNaturalist users who are willing to help with IDs can easily find it and can help to improve or confirm your species identifications. If your observation is marked as captive or cultivated, it's always going to be in the casual bucket. Again, you can use iNaturalist to identify things that you see. For example, there was something growing in a plant growing in a garden in Portugal when I was on vacation a couple of years ago, and I was curious about what it was, and iNaturalist did help me to identify it, but I marked it as captive cultivated because I didn't want anybody to be misled that that thing was in its native range, because indeed it wasn't. Then research grade, again, when there's a high degree of consensus about what the identification is for the species. You can choose your geoprivacy. If you choose open geoprivacy, then other users can see very precisely where your observation was made. You can also very easily choose to obscure geoprivacy. And I do this if I'm taking pictures on private property that is not my own, or if I think that there is just some vulnerability to that species, I don't want people to come looking for it. I also want you to know that the system automatically obscures the location for rare, threatened, and endangered species, and species that, even though they're not RTE yet, rare, threatened, or endangered, they are vulnerable to collection. For example, box turtles. Not endangered yet. I hope they never become endangered, but they're so cute, and people might just want to go make pets out of them. So some species like box turtles, the system automatically obscures the location. You can also choose to make the location completely private, in which case it will only look like this to other identifiers. You're not likely to get a lot of people trying to identify your species if they don't even know what continent it's on. So I recommend, if you feel like there's any sensitivity to the property or the species, setting the geoprivacy to obscured rather than private, but you do have the option of choosing private. All right, just a couple more points. So what happens to the research grade observations in iNaturalist? As I mentioned, They go other places. Those research grade observations are periodically uploaded to something called GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which is a worldwide database about biodiversity and where it occurs on the planet. And researchers and regular people can download that information from GBIF and learn a lot about where rare and common species are occurring on the planet. And that information that's downloaded from GBIF is used in dozens and dozens of scholarly publications annually, totaling in the hundreds over the years since iNaturalist has been contributing to GBIF. So, as Anna mentioned, your observations contribute to science. It's very exciting. So that information can be mined and sliced and diced in all sorts of ways and used to help us learn. For example, you can figure out by looking at trends that the eastern trout lily has bloomed earlier in 2016 and 2017 compared to 2014 and 2015. Phenology, global climate change, perhaps. Another example of how that information is mined is a study was done on where salamanders, newts and salamanders were crossing roads. And that information led to decisions about where to build animal underpasses to reduce roadkill. So there's lots of help available to iNaturalist users. Through the desktop version of iNaturalist, you can easily access the iNaturalist forum, which is where very interesting and robust discussions take place about all sorts of iNaturalist related topics. Within an observation, the comment section, you can tag another user who you think might be knowledgeable about that place or that species. If you wanted to tag Anna or me, for example, just within the comment field, you would write at Anna, her username, or at dbarber, my username. We also host a monthly series in which we get iNaturalist users together from the DC metro area and practice doing identifications and answer questions about iNaturalist. And then there's also a Google group that you can join to receive updates and reminders about iNaturalist related things happening in the area, both the physical area and via Zoom. All right, so I am going to, if I can figure out how to escape from this, just do a super quick desktop tour of what iNaturalist looks like on the desktop. I'm pulling up my homepage, which gives me a feed. It's kind of like your Facebook feed. I can tailor what goes into my feed by following certain people or certain areas. I follow Bill Hubick because he goes cool places and sees great things. I follow Zion National Park. I also get updates about ways that people have interacted with my observations. And then you can access the forum right from here on the right side of your homepage. A really fun thing that you can do with iNaturalist, both on the desktop and on your phone even, is go to the Explore function. If you go to Explore, it's going to pull up observations that are made all around the world. You can see them on a map. You can see them in a couple of different formats. If you want to not look at everything in the world, you can just type in a geographic area. I'm here in Arlington, so I've now filtered on Arlington, and I see that within Arlington, tiny little Arlington County, there have been nearly 5,500 species observed on iNaturalist through the years by nearly 5,000 observers, and 6,000 plus identifiers from around the world have helped to refine and improve those identifications. So I can look at them in the map format. So there's all the stuff that people have seen in Arlington. I can click on an individual pin to see the observation. So this is an example of the really robust information that you can access through the desktop version. I can look at just my observations if I want to. So these are my observations. When you click your observation page, you can see easily how many observations you have, how many species that totals up to, how many people have helped you with your identifications. You can look for just a certain species or any taxon. So if I just want to look at birds, I can type that in and it'll filter it down to just birds, 197 species. So all kinds of things you can do with these fields, and some more advanced filtering is available to you through the filter, which I won't go into tonight. But if you come to one of our iNaturalist nights, I am always talking about the filter because it does so much for you. So just a quick little taste of some of the great things that iNaturalist can do for you on the desktop. All right, so Anna, now I'm going to turn it over to Anna, and she'll be sharing with you some great tips about what to observe and how to observe so that you have a good chance of getting great confirming identifications. All right, Anna, take it away.
Thanks so much. I'll try to watch for my flower and not read the leave one. So thank you so much, Deborah. Okay, so what to observe? Let's talk about that. Let's move on to the next slide. So I would start off with things that you love. I mentioned I'm a fungi fanatic. I also love taking pictures of butterflies and dragonflies and damselflies. And so if there are things that you are regularly taking pictures of, go ahead and start. If you're new to this, go ahead and start with things that you're already taking pictures of. There's no reason to seek out some random taxa. But if you're seeing some things that you're curious about and want to know more about, then start with things you love. Next slide. One of the tenets in our practice of forest bathing is slowing down and taking sort of these meditative walks in nature and connecting to nature. Is we often ask the question, what are you noticing? And so these pictures here is when spring is starting and the baby leaves, all the different trees and shrubs come out, I get kind of excited and I take lots of pictures of them. And I wouldn't notice them if I didn't slow down. And so it's all about maybe paying attention when you're walking about, even if you're just walking from your car to your office or to your house or running errands. Just look down or look up, and you'll probably see some. If you pay attention, you'll probably notice some things that you've been walking by for a long time that you've never noticed before. And those could be good things to observe. Next. Some things are really easy to identify based on their unique shapes and morphology and like how what they look like. So on the left here, we have leaves of a tulip tree. And so iNaturalist can identify that very easy because it doesn't look like a maple leaf. It doesn't look like an oak leaf. It's got that very distinct, what I like to say, cat face, if you will. And then on the right, we have a sweet gum ball. Which, yes, could be confused maybe with a sea urchin or something, but regionally, we're not really going to find any of that around here. And so I usually carry a sweet gum ball around in my kit, in my bag with my camera when I'm making, so that I can demonstrate iNaturalist to people. And I pull the sweet gum ball out so I can show them how an ID works. Next slide. Some things are really easy to photograph because they don't move away from you or fly away from you or swim away from you. So, it could be our beautiful oh my gosh, what am I spacing on the left? These guys. These are,
Bluebells.
yes, they're bluebells. Duh. So the bluebells. On the right is one of my favorite iNaturalist observations I have made to date. I made it during a City Nature Challenge a couple years ago in DC, and I saw this sort of iridescent wings of this bug on this shrub, and I was like, wow, it's so patient. It's letting me sit here and take all these pictures of it. And then I didn't know until later when I examined my photos either on my phone or my camera to realize that this was a zombie fly. So a certain fungus had gone and taken over the body of this fly, laid some eggs in it, kind of popped out, and basically told its brain to go and hang on to the end of this shrub here. And so that's why I was able to get some interesting pictures. And so you never know what you're going to see. And sometimes you get these, what I like, Deborah calls them bonus species, things that are, on things that you don't expect. And so, in fact, after looking at this picture for years and years and years, I finally realized that I don't idea, but there's another bug up on the top there. There's something else. And I, for years, never even noticed that. And then I was giving this presentation, and thought, oh my gosh, there's even something else there. Next slide. Some things move around a lot. And so if you're patient and you have time, it's good to kind of wait. And also you get to kind of know the behaviors of things. So for example, I love to watch dragonflies and damselflies. And a lot of times they like to perch on little sticks like this and kind of spread their wings out and get warm. And your shadow might cast on them and that might freak them out for a second. And sometimes they'll circle around, but they usually come back right to where they were perching because they like that spot. So if you happen to see one and it moves away, just kind of be patient and it'll probably come back to that spot. And so just watch for that. And same with birds. Sometimes birds, and we have a beautiful male cardinal here, sometimes you can't get the whole thing, right? You might just get the head or the tail or the belly, which is fine. That's why we encourage you to take multiple photos of things, because that'll help with the identification. So right now, yep, we got the head in focus. That's all that we can see. Luckily for iNaturalist, iNat could probably ID from that. So even though things are moving, don't get discouraged. Just try to get sort of the kind of information and pictures that you can based on what you're looking at. Next slide. So Deborah talked about wild versus captive cultivated. The iNaturalist app was developed to chronicle and census wild biodiversity. And like she mentioned, you can make observations for your own personal needs of captive and cultivated, and we ask you to do that. So for example, on the left, that is my dog Lonnie. While she thinks she is wild, she is actually a domestic pet. And then pictures of the bonsai and pictures of the orchid at the Botanic Garden. These are obviously cultivated and planted by humans. So they aren't something that I would sort of use for a Bioblitz. However, if I was looking at that orchid at the Botanic Garden and saw a really cool beetle or a butterfly or something, a fly around it, that's fair game. Anything on that planted or cultivated species is fair game. Next slide. So looking for things on things. So this pawpaw flower, which a pawpaw flower, if some of you guys know, are pretty tiny. And I did not know until, after I got home and looked at this picture and zoomed in, there is a teeny tiny little spider in there. We think it might be a form of a crab spider. And so, little things that I didn't notice when I took that photo right up close. I didn't notice that there was another creature in there. Or, bugs on leaves, like these pictures here on the right are from the local library near me in Burke. And so while these red maple trees were planted, they have a tar fungus on them. And so, we're able to still record those in iNaturalist as something wild. Next slide. And then I love this slide. And these pictures were taken by this awesome photographer, Katja Schultz, who I believe she used to work at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. I'm not sure if she's still there, but she's like queen of Rock Creek Park. She's investigated so much stuff and taken, chronicled so much in Rock Creek Park, especially insects. And she's shared these beautiful photos with us. And so it doesn't have to be a whole specimen or organism. It could be a piece of it, or it could be evidence of life. So for example, footprints, scat, or poop. I love when we're working with kids and we're teaching them about this. You tell them that, hey, if you find some poop, we can take a picture of it. And kids, as soon as you say poop, they get really excited, right? So even some adults get excited when you say poop. And so feathers, skin, nests, skulls, anything, holes and things or where critters live. If there's any way for it to be identifiable to a species, go ahead and take pictures of these evidence, pieces of evidence. Next slide. And then audio. It was so cool when iNaturalist introduced the option to add audio files. It used to be just pictures. And so now I like to use the examples of the crows. In this general area, in the DC metro area, we only have two crow species. We have the American crow and we have the fish crow. The American crow has a very distinct caw, 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 and the fish crow has a more nasally sound, sort of like a nuh-uh, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. And so while they look the same, you can take their picture, but unless you hear them audibly, no one's going to be able to kind of ID them. So you would want to make an audio recording, and they've put a button in there where you can record audio. So if you're standing by the forest and you hear a bird, go ahead and press that audio button and capture some of that audio, and perhaps someone might be able to identify. And then of course we have the audio. I have a picture of the cicadas, because obviously those were very audible and we could hear those a lot. Next slide. Tips for observing. Yay. Okay, moving on. So you want to get close. You want to get close if you can and be safe, obviously. So it's good to take out a picture in context. We have one of these spotted beetles here where you see where it is. It looks like it's on a log near a mushroom on the ground. And then you want to get some close-up pictures. And with insects especially, they're skidding about. Just like I mentioned with the bird, taking pictures, like if you can get a good picture of the back, great. But then get a good picture of the face or the legs or a profile or any sort of or their antennae or anything like that. Multiple pictures will help you get a good identification. Next slide. Focus. One thing we'd like to say is if you take a picture first time around and it's out of focus and blurry, just go ahead and delete it. There's no reason to upload anything that's out of focus or blurry into iNaturalist. It's just going to kind of clog up this system and take up space. And people that are making identifications, they're not going to want to look at your blurry pictures because they're not really going to want to work hard. So if iNaturalist, once you take a picture using the app, it'll say, do you want to use this or not? Or do you want to retake the picture? If it's blurry, go ahead and retake it because we really want you to get some better quality things with identifying marks. Next slide. Selecting your focus. So sometimes people might take a picture, they might see a bush and it might have some flowers on it. It might have a butterfly sitting on one of the buds. It might have a bumblebee and there might be a wasp. And there might be 4 different things on that thing. So if you take a picture and you submit it to iNaturalist, the identifiers that are working on making the identifications, they're not going to know what you're trying to identify. So you want to sort of kind of zoom in on one single species so that you're not uploading. Now you can take a photo, for example, let's say the photo on the right, let's say that those maple leaves had some bugs on it or something. There's a little note section in iNaturalist when you're making observations. You could say ID for tree, please. And then you could upload the same picture if it had a bug on it and said ID for insect, please. That way the identifiers will know what to look for. Next slide. Separating your subject. Again, sometimes I like to carry around a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper, something that I can put behind either a spider in a web or needles of a conifer so that you can get the definition, because sometimes our cameras and our phones don't like to focus on the details. And so having a little something behind, even using your hand to put behind, it will help you kind of zoom in on the details. Next slide. And then, as I mentioned, details are really important. So the color of the dragonfly's eyes or the markings on the body or the venations of these of the cranefly wings here that Saranella took, all of these tell a story. And so the more you can capture will help us get to a positive ID. Next slide. Trying different perspectives. I happen to be on a fungi walk with Saranella linatus, one of our colleagues, local colleagues and naturalists. And when she sees stuff, especially since she's a mycologist, she gets down on the ground at eye level with those things to take the pictures. And so there's her on the left taking the picture, and then what she was taking a picture of is on the right here. And so, for example, sometimes people with mushrooms, they'll just like point their camera down and take a picture of mushrooms. We'll talk about that a little bit later because we have a special slide from Saranella on that. So you might just want to get as close as you can and try to get a good perspective. Next slide. Like we put it right next door. So Saranella has every year she kind of revamps this slide with different cool pictures. This is the latest one. I was looking at the one she had in our last presentation. So she gives you some tips on taking pictures before you possibly might pick the mushroom. We definitely want you to take more than one picture. So the top, that's great, but getting the underside is really important as well. Like, is it smooth? Does it have pores? Does it have gills? Is it have different colors on it? Is it bumpy? These are all the types of things that are going to help people. Looking at how it's attached to what is it attached? Is it growing from the grass? Is it growing from a log, a dead log? Where is it coming out of? That's really important. So looking at the habitat. And then if you do, sometimes you don't necessarily always have to pick the pictures. Sometimes I use a little cosmetic mirror. Well, I'll hold the cosmetic mirror under a mushroom so that I can kind of take pictures. So I don't have to pick it if I don't want to. And then she also has things about ways you can manipulate, either touch or scratch the thing. Sometimes they secrete a latex. Sometimes they show an inky color. These are all different characteristics of fungi. And so this is just sort of a great snapshot of what you should be looking for. Don't just take that one mushroom picture, or the mushroom fungi ID people will be kind of bummed out. Next slide. Birds. I love birds. I mentioned I'm a bird nerd, like to go birding. So if that's something you like to do, here we have the mallards on the left, and one of my favorites, the great blue heron on the right. Those are, get them, if you can get them sitting like this, pretty nice. I think somebody mentioned in the chat, it's hard to take pictures, I think, with Seek, obviously, because you're holding it up and it's trying to do an on-the-spot identification with the app. But anyway, we encourage you to take as many different types of pictures that you need so that we can kind of get, what does the face look like? What does the body look like? Where is it located? That type of thing. Next slide. Butterflies and moths, other things that I love to photograph. A lot of times with butterflies and moths, they look different when you're looking at them face down versus when you're looking at them from the side. And so if you're able to get pictures of both from the side and from the top, and get the underside of their wings, that's really helpful and can be diagnostic. Next slide. And butterflies and moths are not just those, but also as Deborah mentioned, she went on her caterpillar stroll. Finding caterpillars is also another fun way to make observations. And they're in their different various stages and instars, and it's really interesting. A lot of them look alike at certain stages, and so it's great. And it's great that in one of the pictures on the left there, we have the penny for scale. Using your finger, your hand, your shoe, anything for scale is really helpful to kind of show people how big of a caterpillar you're looking at. Next slide. And dragonflies and damselflies. That middle picture I love. The dragonfly is what they do. They're called obelisking, and so they like to kind of stand straight with their torso up in the air. They're just kind of maybe drying off, getting warm, that type of thing. And so I mentioned that if you're sitting there watching a dragonfly obelisking and you spook it with your shadow or your movement or something, it'll probably zoom around and come right back to that spot. On the left, we have the great markings there on that one. And then on the right, we have some behavior. These are damselflies that are, there's a male clutching a female, and they're either about to mate or have just mated. So seeing them in that behavior is also really cool. Next slide.
So now I'll continue by sharing some observation tips on some remaining taxa. So my first love was plants, and multiple photos for an individual organism are a really great idea with plants. And compared to dragonflies and damselflies, butterflies and moths and birds, the plants aren't going to run away or fly away. So you have ample opportunity to get multiple shots. So many new iNaturalist users just take a picture of the pretty flower, but there are many species that cannot be identified to species with confidence unless you see the leaves, the stem, the backside of the flower. So for plants, definitely please take more than one picture. Take your time and use multiple shots to show all the different visual aspects of the organism. It's also great to take a step back, take a picture of the whole plant, if it's a small plant, within its habitat, because that is a good help with identification. If there are fruits, definitely get some pictures of those. They're not visible all times of the year, but they can be very diagnostic. And another thing to do is to focus on how the leaves are arranged on the stem. We're looking not just for what the flowers look like, what the leaves look like, but how the leaves are attached to the stem, whether they are all opposite like that, or alternate like these, or whorled like spokes on a wagon wheel. That leaf attachment to the stem is very helpful identification information. Let's talk a little bit about arthropods more generally. Arthropods, of course, include both insects, bugs, also spiders, other creepy crawlies that have jointed legs, like the little roly-polies or millipedes or centipedes that you find in the soil, the leaf litter, or your compost. Many of them can fly away and will when you're trying to sneak up on them and get a closer and closer picture. Start by taking a picture at whatever distance you can, and then get closer and closer, take other shots, and then you'll end up using just the best of those shots. One thing to be aware of as you're trying to sneak up on that creature is if you cast your shadow on the insect, it is more likely to run away. It is more likely to fly away. So be aware of your body position, as Anna mentioned. Another thing that you should do, if you possibly can, without it flying away, is go for those shots from multiple angles. The markings on the abdomen, the faces, all of those are helpful identifying information. And and the antenna are information rich, both for the organism and for you in helping to identify it. One trick that you can try if you are able to catch the creature and you're able to carefully put it into a Ziploc bag without harming it, that'll give you an opportunity to look at its underside. So here you've got some photos by our friend Sarah Nella, who's using the Ziploc bag tip to see the underside of this moth and to get a closer up look at this spider. Beetles are colorful, diverse, and fascinating. There's so many patterns. Some of them are a little slower than the butterflies and wasps, but they still will fly away from you. Another thing to be aware of is some of them will just drop off the plant. They don't fly away, but when they're alarmed, especially the weevils, they will just let go of the plant and drop to the ground, and you never see them again. So they can be kind of challenging to capture. But if you are able, try and focus on this little place on their back. That's a good point to focus on to make sure that you're getting kind of the whole animal in focus if you can only take one shot. Spiders are beautiful and fascinating, and I love getting pictures of them. It's a little easier when they're on a solid surface, like this jumping spider. It can be much more challenging when they're suspended in a web because you're not getting as much surface area to focus on. But a tip for you before you go out and make those spider observations is experiment with your camera. Learn how to lock the focus on a certain position. You do that by just pressing your finger on the screen until a little square comes up, and then your camera is going to be focused on a certain focal distance, and then you move the camera back and forth so that you get the spider in focus. I feel like I'm not explaining it very well, but play around with your camera and some stationary objects in your home, and you'll get the idea. It will be very helpful with spiders. Bees and wasps. You've got great information in their abdominal markings. As Anna mentioned, the vein patterns and the wings are also very helpful. Try and get their little faces if you can. And I've gotten a lot of pretty close-up pictures of wasps and bees before they fly away. And sometimes people say, aren't you worried about them, coming after you? No, I've never been. I think I bother them more than they bother me. I've never been stung by anything that I'm trying to photograph. These guys are just flying around, looking for food, living their lives. They're not interested in me. I very much appreciate the extent to which they're willing to share themselves with me, but I've never gotten hurt by anything that I've been observing. Okay, a few other tips and reminders. If you do need to look under some leaf litter for some creepy crawlies to photograph, please replace those leaves. In general, replace any microhabitats that you temporarily disturb or shuffle up in order to get your observation. If you're doing a long day, bring an extra battery or have a way to charge your phone partway through. Some of my best observation days, I've had to recharge a couple of times because I'm really on a roll. And it's very sad when you run out of battery before you run out of time. Some good objects to have with you, some kind of common object that you can use for scale, like a coin or a ruler. I often use my hand because I don't have either one of those. A small mirror, Anna mentioned this, like a mirror in a compact to see the undersides of things. This allows you to see that these mushrooms have gills rather than pores without having to stand on your head to take a picture from underneath or knock the mushroom over. A little hand lens for seeing things closely, a flashlight to use as fill flash and get some more light on your subject, especially on overcast days, can be really helpful. And a piece of cardboard or paper to separate your subject from its background. Those can also be helpful in giving you better quality pictures that are more likely to get a good identification from the computer vision in the app and also from the citizen science community. Oh, so many of my Anna takes beautiful pictures. I take functional pictures, and so many of them I have with me for scale and also to help focus. A lot of times I'll put my hand behind a flower or behind a spider on its web to help me focus. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to do with all of those observations that we're taking between Thursday and Sunday. We go out and we observe all that nature and we record it. We're participating in a Bioblitz, which is a survey of a defined area, usually in a specific amount of time. Some Bioblitzes are just a few hours, some of them are 24 hours. The Anacostia Watershed Bioblitz is 4 whole days. So we've got a lot of chances to get out there and see and record great stuff. We're looking for as many species collectively, with all of us participating, as we can in that short amount of time. Goes through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, September 5th through 8th. And if you participate, you will notice things that you've never noticed before. You will see the great diversity, the biodiversity of the Anacostia watershed. I think you'll be really pleased with how many fabulous creatures share our habitat with us in the Anacostia watershed. So you can use the iNaturalist app either at your own pace, exploring on your own, or you can join one of 4 guided walks that we have on Saturday that you're welcome to join. We'd love to have you there. And when you upload your observations, you will learn about them by all of the identification help that you'll get from the iNaturalist community. Some of the identifiers participate from other places, not even the United States. So it's wonderful to have this worldwide as well as local participation in documenting the biodiversity of the Anacostia watershed. So why would you want to do this? We hope, Anna and I hope, that we have excited you about participating. I think that we're going to have some really good weather, and we could all benefit from more time outdoors, away from our screens. We're using screens outdoors, but they're really just a way to help us connect with the biodiversity and all the cool things that we're seeing outdoors. You'll learn a really great app that, if you enjoy being in nature, will serve you for years and years to continue learning about your environment. You'll see some things that you've never seen before. You will learn about them. The information that you're gathering will help scientists, and you'll meet people. You'll expand your social network. And one of the things that I love about participating with iNaturalist right here in the DC area is breaking down people's preconceptions about how the DC area is just marble columns and museums and lawyers and bureaucrats. We are blessed with an incredible array of biodiversity here right in our nation's capital, and I love showing that off by using iNaturalist. All right, Anna, back to you.
Thanks. So the first thing that we encourage you to do is download the app and create an account, as we demonstrated earlier, and then join the project. And so on the desktop there, it'll say you can go in and search for projects. I think it's the community tab, and then you click on projects, and you can type in 8th Annual Anacostia River Bioblitz, and it'll come up. And then in the upper right-hand corner, there's like where says the 330 people. There it'll say join or leave. And so I've already joined it, which is why it says leave on there. So I wouldn't leave it. So you click on join, and that just kind of makes you sort of an official part of the Bioblitz. However, anything that you observe during those 4 days in the watershed region, that's going to be captured automatically if your geotagging is on to be open. Even if you don't physically click join, your observations will still be included. And so we encourage you to get the app on your phone, start practicing, or put it on your device. Also explore the desktop amenities and features, because it's very, very robust. You could get just there's all kinds of stuff that you can, if you're curious to know about salamanders, you can go up and find, all the salamanders in the region, species, that type of thing, or see what's here. Also, I like to use it when I travel. So for example, I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going on a trip to Japan next month, and I'm going to go into iNaturalist and pull up the cities that I'm going to be visiting to see what kind of biodiversity has already been discovered, so that I know what I can see. But much like when Deborah went to Australia, just to kind of know what you're gonna see there. Next slide. Oh, and actually, this, before you move, I'm sorry, can you go back for a second? I think those were so this is a screenshot that shows from the main page of the biodiversity of the Anacostia River. And so over 340,000 observations have been made of over 9,400 species. So that's to date. Okay, that's to date. So everything that we're doing for the Bioblitz, that's going to be, icing on the cake, adding to all this. But these are the top 10 species that have been observed. And you can see there the pond slider, the robin, some of the birds and things like that. Great. Next slide. So practice, practice, practice. Practice making identifications too. If you, for example, if you happen to know a lot about beetles, go in there and start practicing making identifications for beetles. As we mentioned, it's going on from the 5th to the 8th, and you can do things just on your own or join some of the organized groups that are going on. And then definitely, there's a social media aspect to it as well. So we'd love to see you out there iNatting, out there making observations. So definitely tag the Anacostia River Bioblitz or Anacostia Watershed Society, any of those things, so that, so we can see what you're looking at. Next slide. Order some swag. Now, granted, this probably isn't going to come in before the Bioblitz. However, it's always cool to have like t-shirts from the different nature nerd things that you do. So if you want to support the watershed, please go. They have long sleeve and short sleeve tees. Next slide. And then places to observe. So we just wanted to highlight a couple places in the area. So Deborah mentioned that there are going to be a series of walks on Saturday, September 7th at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. And so these are the 4 different walks that are happening. And I know that Jenny's on the call as well. Jenny is one of our superstar iNaturalist users, not only making observations, but also identifications. And then we have Bradley from Nature Forward talking about plants. Deborah's going to be doing a bug walk. And then Lynette Fullerton will be doing some bird watching. And as you can see, all these different organizations, logos, these are all the different folks that are participating, sponsoring, and promoting this event. Next slide. And so for those 4 days, if you happen to not go on Saturday when those guided walks are happening, you can go at any time during those 4 days to Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens to make observations. Next slide. Oxen Run Park. I love to lead walks for the City Nature Challenge here. There's all kinds of, trees and critters and lichen and all kinds of birds to see over there. That is also in the watershed. Next. Kingman and Heritage Island, such an abundance of biodiversity. Just, walking over that bridge onto first Heritage Island and then further down to Kingman, there's just so much that you can see there. So we highly recommend that you go check that out if you need a place to make observations on your own or with your family and friends. Next slide. Fort DuPont, another park. There's a whole series of the Fort Parks around. So there's all different types of species and taxa that you can observe. There's creeks, there's trees, there's plants, there's, just turning over rocks and turning over logs gently and putting them back. So lots to see over at the Fort DuPont Park. Next slide.
All right, I mentioned that we have a get together over Zoom every month. They focus on identification of observations within the DC metro area. We usually have a presentation by a guest on a topic like some of the examples have been aphids, spring wildflowers, galls. And so we have a presentation by a guest speaker, and then we separate out into virtual breakout rooms, and focus on identifying observations of that taxon in the DC metro area. I also keep the main room open on Zoom as a welcome room, where I do demos, answer questions for newcomers to iNat, just generally anything that you need to help you get situated and feel more comfortable getting started with iNaturalist or taking your iNaturalist use to the next level. Every second Tuesday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. we are right here on Zoom. So we hope that you will use iNaturalist to explore and document all the great stuff that lives in the Anacostia watershed. I'll be there on Saturday. I hope to see some of you. Remember that you can join one of the guided walks, or you can explore on your own anytime during the upcoming 4 days. All right, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Jorge, for inviting us. And I'm happy to stay here and answer any questions or field any comments that you all might have about iNaturalist or about the Bioblitz.
Thank you, Deborah and Anna. This was great, as usual. And looks like there's been some comments and questions. So the last one, it's about like the so just wanted to make clear the observations will be tomorrow, so Thursday to Sunday, and then the identification time is all the way until September 18 when we will launch the results of the Bioblitz.
I noticed that you also put in there are 4 gaps or areas of the watershed that could use more observation. So we appreciate that. So if you guys click on that link, and you can save the chats, you can save the chat links so that if you want to go and explore in some of those areas, that would be highly recommended. Somebody I saw asked a question, I think was it Casey that asked, is there going to be a delay for IDs, a lag for identification like the CNC?
Oh yeah, that was the same question. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Got it.
basically observations 5 to 8, and then IDs all the way through the before September 18. Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. Oh, interesting. So Jody asks, my question, how captive is captive considering that we are in such a disturbed and developed environment?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, Deborah?
Yeah, sometimes you just don't know. And for example, when I was vacationing in Australia, I didn't know a lot of times whether something was captive or wild because I just wasn't familiar with the flora and fauna. So if you are not sure, you can just, I sometimes wrote into the comments, I don't know if this is wild or captive. And then the community came in and said, yeah, this is frequently planted. So then I marked it as captive or cultivated. Nobody is going to shame you. If you do submit an observation of something that is cultivated, it's very easy for other users to just to downvote it. So if you're not sure, but you think it's an interesting organism that you'd like to capture photographically, then go ahead and submit the observation. And the community will help you decide whether it's captive or cultivated.
And regarding captive cultivated, one of our dear friends who is also a CNC organizer, she works for iNaturalist, Carrie Seltzer. Some of you may know her. She has her own private iNaturalist project for things she's discovered and observed in her own yard. She's got, oh gosh, the last time it was like close to 1,600 observations, I think, I forget, but she's probably way beyond that. And that is a private project to her so that she can keep track of things that she's planted, but then also things that have visited her property. So, or another example would be the Burke Library, near where I work. When we were doing the City Nature Challenge, they had planted a pollinator garden. Well, I set up a project on iNaturalist for the library so that they could record everything that's planted, but then also things that come to visit. So it's a combination. It's collecting, it's showing them what they have there that they've planted, but then it's also showing what's come to take advantage of those pollinator plants. So yeah, definitely no shame in it. People will identifiers will give you little notes. Is Jenny still on the call? Let me see. Did Jenny have to?
Yeah, I don't see her anymore.
Okay, yeah, she was here. Jenny Glenn, who is leading one of those walks, one of the naturalist walks. So definitely check her out. But she is one of our superstar identifiers. She's on there she's made, thousands and thousands of observations and identifications, and she's a real resource for us because she's seen it all, she's seen it all. So we love to point out those folks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Feel free to like unmute yourself and ask any questions while we're here. Or we can share our contact information if you want to pop us an email offline or something. But is there a version of the map areas that need more observations than that has street names? Interesting.
That has stream. Oh, I thought that should have because it's a Google map. But I will take a look at that because that should have street names being a Google map. And
Yeah, if you zoom in, it takes a while for all the layers to pull up, but if you zoom in, the street names will eventually show up. You just have to get a little closer.
mhm.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
works.
and basically what I did, I look at our ongoing project, Biodiversity of the Anacostia, and sort of visually using my knowledge of the watershed and identify those areas. So it's an approximate boundary, and those have been consistently the gaps throughout the year since we started this project in 2017. So a reminder that that's the ongoing project. We would love if you can follow it, but we always have a project specific for the annual Bioblitz, and that's the one that I shared for the 8th annual Bioblitz. That's what we will be using to track observations during the event and beyond. And again, it counts this was already replied, but just wanted to reemphasize that this is a watershed-wide effort. Our collection projects include the whole Anacostia River watershed. So eastern half of DC, parts of Prince George's County, Maryland, and parts of Montgomery County, Maryland. Again, the only public event we're offering this year is the Saturday event at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens from 10 to 2. There's going to be another, the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center will be doing a fish survey, but that won't be public. That will happen tomorrow or Friday. But they will post the observations on iNaturalist, so keep an eye on those if you're a fish fauna enthusiast. Last year they caught a walleye, which is rare for the Anacostia River, long-nosed gar, which not that rare for the river. They are actually there. So yeah, a bunch of interesting stuff.
I have a question, Jorge, about the mussels. So if someone finds the mussels, granted, they've been like your volunteers have, helped distribute the mussels and such, but they're still considered wild, correct?
Yeah, actually, great point. I was gonna add that because I added one of the mussels that we released and it was tagged. And I was sort of being conservative and I added it as captive, but someone told me that because it was 1 year after release and he told me that by then it is pretty much wild because it's on its own. It's not in a cage or anything. So it's a released animal. So yeah.
So yeah, if someone's out and about and they happen to see one, they could go ahead and report that, right? Observation. That's
Oh yeah.
great. That's awesome.
Especially if you're at Kenilworth in the tidal area, so right by the Anacostia River Walk Trail. If you're exploring that area, the main inlet of Kenilworth, chances are at low tide, you might see a mussel. One of our mussels, our tag.
I was going to say, do you want to just say a quick bit about the mussel program, Jorge, since that's such a cool program that you guys do?
Yes, so since we started it in 2015 with the help of experts from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, we did an inventory of the mussels, and by 2018 we started propagating them in partnership with a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hatchery based in Charles City, Virginia. And to date, we have released up to 36,000 mussels of 5 native species. And they are all from the watershed. They are all native, and they are all from animals collected in either in the Anacostia or the Potomac. So the same drainage, as it's sort of the rule for mussel propagation. You don't want to get rootstock from other watersheds. So
And
yeah.
you guys organize volunteer events where people can go help you with these things, which I
Yeah.
have company. I've come to one of them where I haven't actually physically done it. I've just taken pictures of y'all doing it. But what I am going to get to one of those days when I can do it too.
Yeah, we do mussel surveys, we monitor hatchery raised mussels, or we do mussel releases, among other activities. Sometimes it's just like maintenance of the enclosures and such. There's another question by Corina. Are duplicate observations helpful? Is documenting common species important? Or should we seek out species with less observations if possible? I think they are all valid, but I will let up to you all because sometimes duplicating observations, they might be important for use or for your own record. And if it's at the same time and the same location, you can infer that it was the same organism. If a bunch of people during for example, a Bioblitz on Saturday, probably we're gonna get a lot of that. Especially at our stations of macroinvertebrates and our station about pond critters. So I wouldn't worry about that, but I would let Deborah and Anna talk more about that.
Yeah, I'll add just a little bit to that. Anna and I attended a presentation that was offered by iNaturalist staff last week. And one of the co-founders of iNaturalist said, if you want to make an observation, make it. If it's interesting to you, make that observation. Don't worry about duplication. I can tell you on that caterpillar safari that I went on, there was one super cool looking, spiky, stinging caterpillar that was beautiful and so unusual. 5 different people took a picture of that caterpillar and submitted it in their observations. people who are using the data can know, they can tell that that is 5 different people looking at the same organism. It's not going to throw the data off. And what that means is that each of those 5 people has their own record and a really fond memory of that absolutely fabulous caterpillar that we all interacted with. So remember, an observation is one person's interaction with an organism in a time and a place. If you take a picture of the oak tree in the spring when the flowers are putting out pollen and making everybody sneeze, and somebody else takes a picture of that oak tree in the fall when the acorns are there, those are 2 observations of the same organization, but at different times. That's useful information about phenology, when things bloom and when things fruit. So all of those observations are useful and contribute to science.
Great answer.
Yeah, and about the other parts, documenting common species can be useful. Just looking at the example that Deborah and Anna showed of the trout lily, because it can help in different research about phenology, when these plants bloom, for example, in different years, responding to different weather conditions and such. So yeah, I think is good if it's a common species. If it's a less common species, even more helpful.
That's great. You guys have great questions.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And let's see who makes the first observation after midnight. I'm probably one
Oh.
because I didn't sleep very good last night, so I'm gonna be busy sleeping.
So Deborah, did you do it? So for the City Nature Challenge, I'm one of those people that stays up until midnight to try to make the first observation. And I think I may have tied with Carrie Seltzer this year. I'm not sure, Deborah, maybe you were in, like, I think we took them at the same time or something like that, you know? So I'm one of those nerdy people that tries to make the first observation.
Yeah.
Sadly, I don't live in the watershed, so I won't be up at midnight doing anything, but it's always fun to see. Yeah.
Yeah, and Saturday will be a great opportunity to explore aquatic organisms that not a lot of people get the chance to see, you know, the fish, crayfish, and whatnot, and macroinvertebrates, because Nature Forward will have the creek critters station. So it'll be a great opportunity to learn about these organisms.
I'm going to put a shameless plug for our event calendar for my nonprofit, Capital Nature. We like to curate a list of nature events happening in the region, and so we have a cool calendar of that. So I'm just going to put our website in the chat in case anybody wants to click on calendar and kind of check out other events. And the Bioblitz information is all included on there. Yeah.
And yeah, and again, plants and insects, spiders or arachnids always need observations. These are very broad groups with a lot of species. But again, I would say take advantage of the phenologies and the seasonal phenomena going on right now. All the wildflowers blooming for the fall. Caterpillars is the second best caterpillar season of the year. Mushrooms, actually, mushrooms has been very interesting because the observations have been growing a lot in the last few years. So it looks like
And
people are
slime
really.
molds and slime molds. I remember
Mhm.
one year because I
Mhm.
liked observing slime molds. It was like 1 or 2 observations one year, and then a whole bunch of people got them, for the next year to boost the numbers. Speaking of that, Jorge, I think it's you that usually makes the cool table that shows the change over the years of the numbers. Is that you, or is that someone on your team that does that? Because
Yes.
I always love we've shown that in previous other presentations. So no pressure, but it'll be really awesome, like after this one's over, to kind of see how 2024 stacked up with the previous years.
Yeah, and sometimes it's interesting because I made on the column like of the year very sort of broad statement on the weather conditions. If it's like a rainy if it was a rainy weekend or a dry and warm weekend. And sometimes you can sort of see some patterns. For example, obviously a lot of mushrooms during wetter bioblitzes and such. So I think that's very interesting.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming, everybody. Thanks for having us, Jorge, for this AWS Watershed Wednesday. This was super, super fun. It's always fun to talk about things that we love to do out in nature. So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Deborah and Anna, and everyone for joining, and happy Bioblitzing tomorrow.
Happy iNatting.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.